I think there's a couple aspects as to why I was so passionate about starting Chronicle. I think number one was because I'm a strong believer that hearing other people's stories and feeling like there is someone else out there who is going through something similar or also struggling, that sense of unity that you get from that is really powerful for someone. I'll go into it a little bit later, but I think that sense of aloneness and not having anyone around you who would understand what you're going through is really prevalent for someone who is starting to deal with mental health issues, whatever form they may take. So I think creating a platform where we really trying not to address it, but help with that, just by having people share stories was really important to me. And I think another thing for me was I used the Beyond Blue public forums quite a bit. Just reading through people's stories, reading through the responses. I used to lie in bed during my tougher times and just kind of read through stuff, because I think for me it really helped just hearing what other people were going through, and that, as I mentioned earlier, like that it's not necessarily a unique experience. And being able to read someone else's story and go, wow, that's like so similar to what I'm going through. Like I didn't realize this happened to a lot of people. That on its own is a little bit therapeutic. And that sense of kind of camaraderie and community that comes from that. So I was really, I guess, attracted to the idea of creating that same sort of concept, that sense of community, that sense of sharing, but on a more, I guess, accessible platform, just because not many people necessarily know that Beyond Blue forums even exist, or let alone feel comfortable going and actually using that resource. So I think leveraging things like social media and other sort of services that we already use, and using that same kind of community was going to be really effective and potentially help some people. So they're really the two aspects as to why I was super keen to start Chronicle. So I guess my journey with mental health sort of spans about 4 years between 2017 and 2020. Obviously, everyone's journey is ongoing, but that's really for me the biggest bulk of time where I went through probably what I would describe as the sort of toughest period of my life. So yeah, I guess over that time I was suffering from, I guess, varying degrees of health anxiety and panic disorder. And one sort of, I guess, triggered the other in the sense that my panic attacks were generally centered around my health and concerns around my health. And while those were the specific in the moment triggers, I guess the general tendency to be anxious and suffer from panic attacks was probably caused by things in my past that I hadn't really dealt with, like family issues and loss of loved ones and that sort of thing, that I guess at the time I didn't really have the maturity or the tools to deal with, and I really suppressed it. So I guess in a way the health anxiety and the panic attacks were a delayed manifestation of that trauma, I guess. Although that sounds dramatic, I guess that's what it was. So over like that span of 4 years, which really started in 2017 when I was getting throat infections quite a lot. I was just getting sick all the time. And that really started to sort of get me worried about my health in general. And so at that point it was more of a low level health anxiety, you might say, where I was just constantly worried, like, oh, is this being caused by something more serious? Are we missing something? I was going to the doctor multiple times per month, probably, to get various things looked at, and I had surgery on my tonsils. So I lost quite a bit of weight as well during that year, just from not being able to eat and then just like regularly getting sick. And people were constantly saying things to me like, no, you look a little bit underweight at the moment. Have you lost weight? You look so skinny. And like all those things kind of, I guess, came together to create this perfect storm, if you will. And this perfect sort of mindset that, hey, it feels like there's something more serious that's going wrong. And I remember I was away for a part of about 2-3 months of that year, over in Europe on my gap year, and I wasn't enjoying it. And I was away with friends, I was away with my family and that sort of thing, and I wasn't having fun. I was really in my own head, really worried about my health, constantly on the phone back to my parents about how I was feeling, and I wasn't enjoying it, which really wasn't what it should have been. Like, I feel like that kind of trip that you do after school is something that you should really enjoy, and sadly mine was kind of, I guess, I wouldn't say ruined, but like affected by the fact that I was so anxious about my health that year. And then it kind of got into 2018, and I sort of established a routine at uni and work where I could kind of really ignore what was going on. And I wouldn't say that I was dealing with the anxiety at all. I would just say that I'd sort of created a routine where I was almost too busy to think about it, which definitely is not the way to deal with something like that in hindsight. And yeah, so 2018, my anxiety probably, I would say, was a little bit better and a little bit more of the back seat, in the back seat, and didn't sort of, I guess, impede on my ability to enjoy life like it did the year before. But then in early 2019, I had what I would like sort of describe as my first panic attack, my first full-blown panic attack. And that was kind of, I guess, the moment where it shifted from being just general sort of health anxiety to something a lot more, I guess, profound and impactful on my life. So for anyone who's had a panic attack or suffered from panic disorder, they'll know that a panic attack is very physical. You feel a lot of physical symptoms that kind of are a result of the anxiety. So the way it was once described to me by my psychologist was, anxiety is where you're worried about something that may happen. So for example, like, oh wow, it would be terrible to die of a heart attack. Whereas panic attack is really more like, I'm having a heart attack, and your body responds in a way that it believes it's actually happening in that moment. So it's a lot more physical and a lot more like fight or flight kind of mode for your body. And for me, like, the symptoms were pretty broad, which was scary. The biggest one was obviously like my heart would be like pounding in my chest. Like, I'd be really aware of having like heart palpitations or like feeling my heart beating in my chest, as well as like breathlessness. So I really felt like someone was pushing down on my chest, and I'd struggle to breathe. I'd get dizzy, I'd get numbness in my like arms and legs. And I was also getting something called derealization, which I only learnt about later. But like, just feeling really disoriented in my environment. Like, when I was in a period of like pretty acute anxiety or panic, I would feel like almost detached from the world around me, which was pretty like unsettling. But so I had my first panic attack, I guess, lost my panic attack virginity in early 2019. And from there, it kind of gradually got worse and worse and more intrusive. So my panic attacks, because they felt so physical and real, I mean, they were real, but like, because the symptoms felt so physical and real, my health anxiety kind of shifted towards those symptoms. So for example, the two biggest ones were the heart palpitations, or that feeling of my heart beating in my chest, and the breathlessness. Like, I really started to worry that there was something actually wrong with my heart or my lungs. And that started slowly in early 2019 and kind of gathered momentum throughout the year, to the point where, and I've got friends who will vouch for this, because I was with them, where I'd be in the gym, and obviously I'm squatting like 850 kilos, just a normal day at the office. And like, obviously you're at the gym, like your heart's gonna beat faster, and you're gonna feel a bit breathless. Like, these are all normal bodily responses. But for me, they would like absolutely send me into mayhem. Like I would get really triggered by it. I'd go into full-blown anxiety attacks or panic attacks in the gym as a result. And so yeah, they started in like early 2019, and I sort of managed to work through them. So like exercising in general became like a bit of a battle. I'd really have to like psych myself up. I even wrote out like a note to read to myself during the session to like remind myself that it was just panic and not serious and etc. But it ultimately it didn't really help. They just kept getting worse and worse to the point where in the back end of 2019, I couldn't exercise anymore. I couldn't do any sort of physical activity, whether that was going to the gym, going for a run, going for a bike ride, even just going for a walk or kicking the footy with mates at the park. Really basic stuff in the end. I just couldn't do, because I'd do them and like really straight away, like be so hyper conscious of my heart pounding in my chest. I'd get those heart palpitations. I'd have difficulty breathing. I'd feel really dizzy. And that would like really set me off, like I guess a fear that I was having actually a heart attack rather than a panic attack. And yeah, like that was really difficult, like not being able to do things that I really love doing, but B, like I felt like I should be able to do, like things that, like normal things that people should just be able to do, I wasn't able to do anymore. And I started having to restrict my life and make changes to my life because of it, which I was really aware of and really, I guess, upset about. Like for example, I remember buying an Apple Watch in the middle of that year because I wanted to be able to track my heart rate every moment of the day, just in case something happened, like I became almost like obsessive about my heart and my lungs and my breathing and all that. And yeah, it got steadily worse and worse to the point where I couldn't do anything physical at all, as I said. And it meant that like even just going for a walk with a friend became a huge task for me. And I wasn't able to even connect with the people around me. So that was the other thing. Like obviously I wasn't able to exercise, but then because I was so in my own head, stressing about it, psyching myself up to do these sorts of things, if I was going for a walk with someone, I remember going for walks with my sister heaps where we'd be chatting, but like I couldn't tell you what we spoke about 2 minutes after we left because I wasn't actually present. I wasn't actually engaged. I was really just in my own head, stressing about, am I going to have a panic attack? What am I going to do if I have one? Where am I going to go? What am I going to say? Am I just going to bolt? Am I going to call an ambulance? Like just playing over every worst case scenario. And that fear of having one really made it more likely that I would have one in a way. Like that kind of heightened anxiety around having a panic attack would trigger them. So it was kind of it was a bit of a cycle. And yeah, that kind of spread into other things as well slowly. So it started mainly around exercise and when I was actually physically exerting myself. But in the end, towards late 2019, even early 2020, I was experiencing them in all walks of life. Like I'd be out for dinner with a friend, and same thing, like I wasn't actually present. I wasn't able to be engaged in the conversation. I wasn't able to invest in the friendship or relationship or whatever it was because I was just in my own head. So going to friends' houses for dinner, going out for dinner, even just going to uni and sitting in class, like all I could think about was, am I going to have a panic attack? And then if I did have one, that would just like really set me off, and I obviously wouldn't be able to kind of, say anything. I'd just have to sort of sit there silently while I was going through it. And they would last sometimes anywhere between like 10 minutes and 2 hours, where I'd just be in this state of like full body sensations, as I was saying, like with those symptoms, like the pounding heart, the breathlessness, the dizziness, like that would last a long time sometimes. So it was really hard to have those interactions and enjoy life and invest in those relationships, I guess. And then, like early 2020, as more and more aspects of my life became restricted, that's probably where I sort of reached my I guess, darkest place mentally. I was still having the daily panic attacks, but I guess now the difference was that I really wasn't enjoying life anymore because I was so aware of how much of an impact it was having. And I just stopped enjoying doing the things that I liked doing. And I guess I kind of lost the hope that things would ever change. I kind of accepted that this was just my fate and I wasn't going to be able to do a whole bunch of stuff that I really liked doing. And that was a really upsetting, I guess, thought that I had, and I kind of accepted it as truth. So that was probably where I would say I kind of developed like mild depression because, I just had no energy. I had no motivation. I was like, you know what? I'm just going to stay in bed all day mostly because I know that if I get up and do anything, I'm just going to have a panic attack and I'm going to feel terrible and I don't want that and I'm scared of that happening. So that's probably, I guess for me, as bad as it got, was really losing that hope and losing that belief that things would ever get better. And it was probably, I guess that was the turning point, becoming aware of that mindset. I was like, no, I really have to make a change here. And so I decided to go see a psychologist and really kind of threw myself into that. I was seeing her 2-3 times a week at its worst because she was the only one that I felt comfortable confiding in. And that was also a big part of it, is that I really didn't feel comfortable talking to anyone about the specifics or the depths of what I was going through. Whether it was my family, my friends, my girlfriend at the time, like I really pushed them all away, and our relationships obviously suffered as a result. Because like I just felt like, this is just what I'm feeling. No one would feel like this. This is ridiculous. Like they're gonna think I'm an idiot for being so irrational and anxious about my health. And I was like embarrassed and ashamed and just I didn't know how to talk to people about it. So my psychologist was really the only person that really knew the extent to what I was going through. And I guess slowly like working with her, we were kind of working on mindset changes and self-talk changes just to kind of help me manage those panic attacks and give me tools to work through them rather than trying to cure them or get rid of them, because that's probably one of the biggest things I learned, is that mental health, whether it's panic attacks, depression or whatever it is, you never cure it, you never get rid of it. It's about managing it and finding an equilibrium, I guess, where you can continue to live your life without limits for the most part and enjoy life while managing these things, because it's all about management, and we're all going to go through harder times, easier times, better times, worse times, and so like I think the biggest thing that her and I worked on was self-compassion and not being so self-critical, because that was a big aspect of I guess my mindset during those really rough months, was that I was very, very harsh on myself. Like I would like force myself to go for a walk or try and go for a run. And then when I couldn't, I'd be really down on myself. Like, oh no, you idiot. Like, how can you not do this? Like, this is pathetic. And obviously that didn't really help my psyche to kind of get over or get through those feelings. And I think another really important part when it comes to self-compassion, and this was particularly during, I guess, my recovery stage, was celebrating the wins. Was really, in the same way that I was so critical about things that I couldn't do when I was going through a really tough time, really celebrating, as sad as it may seem, really celebrating the achievements. So exercise being such a big one for me, like when I was able to start going for bike rides again, going for runs, going to the gym, not brushing that off and actually taking notice of the progress that I'd made, and going from someone who literally for a long time couldn't step foot into a gym because I'd have a panic attack, to someone who can go 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times a week. Like I think they were achievements that I really needed to celebrate, And I did, and I consciously did that, and that was something that I worked on with my psychologist, and I guess that was a really big part of that idea of self-compassion and being kinder to yourself, and in the same way that being critical is so detrimental to your mindset, being really positive and celebratory with yourself had a really positive impact on me. So just being a lot kinder to myself was a big one that her and I worked on, and acknowledging that no one's perfect and that this isn't my fault. There's not something wrong with me, or there's not something I'm doing wrong. It's just the way it is for now. And that kind of leads into the second part, the second thing that we really worked on, and that was acceptance. Just acceptance of, I guess, life in general. That although it was mainly centered around my panic attacks, acceptance is something that I've really tried to incorporate into my whole life, and just accepting that things aren't always going to go the way that you want them to go, or you're going to sometimes be super anxious, or you're going to have a panic attack sometimes, and just kind of accepting and embracing those emotions and feelings is really important. And that's a way of just kind of making room for them, and not trying to, I guess, shove them away and suppress them and get rid of them as fast as you can, but really just making room for them. So I guess, that was a really big part of what helped me was seeing my psychologist as often as I did, and really committing to that work. And another thing that really helped me, and I was actually advised against doing for a long time, was I actually decided in the middle of 2020 to get a super comprehensive set of heart examinations done. And people said to me that, if I got them done and everything came back clear, that it wouldn't get rid or help me in any way, because I'd find something else to be anxious about, which I was actually a little bit worried about getting them done. But I went ahead and got them done, and I think it really helped me, because when thankfully obviously everything came back completely fine, it kind of helped me to realize that sometimes what my mind was telling me and was not true, no matter how convincing it seemed to be. So my mind was telling me that there was something definitely wrong with my heart, that I was unwell, that I was potentially had heart issues or whatever it was, with these feelings of panic. But I think by getting the heart test done and then realizing that everything was fine despite what my mind was telling me, it kind of gave me more of a belief that I don't have to believe what my mind says, and that my mind is just being anxious and suffering from anxiety, and that even when it tells me, something's wrong with your heart, it doesn't mean it's true. And that was another big thing for me that really helped me kind of break down that sense of uncertainty. And then I used that in a more broad sense to kind of help manage my mindset and not buy into the anxious and, I guess, in some way irrational thoughts that my mind would have about my health. The other thing that really helped was, I guess, once I was in a slightly better place towards the middle of 2020 and the back end of 2020, was I actually did start speaking to the people around me, and it was honestly I was baffled by how many people have been through something similar, or could relate to what I was saying, or would respond with, "Oh yeah, I've literally felt that exact same feeling," not about health anxiety, but about something else. And it amazed me that as soon as you're willing to, I guess, be vulnerable and open yourself up and share your story, you'll be surprised at how many people turn around and can relate to you. And I guess for me, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned, is the value of opening up and just sharing and being vulnerable. And I guess that's what this platform is all about, and why I'm so passionate about committing to this platform, is because I really think that there is so much value in sharing your story and having, even if it's just one other person, relate and be like, wow, I thought that was unique to me. Just like I thought that what I was going through was unique, but it obviously isn't. If someone can watch someone else's story and go, wow, that's just knowing that there's someone else going through what I'm going through, it actually really helps me, then that's what we're trying to do here. And I think by sharing my story and showing everyone that I'm willing to be vulnerable, that I hope that will encourage others to to follow in my footsteps and the footsteps of the previous episodes that we've had, the amazing stories that we've heard from other people. And yeah, I guess like I just hope that we can continue to share these stories and can continue to hear people's vulnerabilities and the challenges they've faced, because it helps everyone. And that's really what this platform is all about. So thank you for listening to my story.